not this month.
Okay. Committee activity. Chris and I have been attending the climate smart activity, I guess, group. And Chris is going to give us a report on that.
Okay. We've talked about Climate Smart program before, but I thought I would take the opportunity to describe it in a little bit more detail. This is a New York State program which sets out a whole list of activities that communities can pursue to improve the environment. And they have two basic objectives. One is reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and the second is increasing the resilience of communities to the effects of climate change, such as flooding and heat and so on and so forth. The program also provides grant opportunities to pay for these initiatives. And tonight I'm going to ask for the board's support as we apply for our first grant. As all of us know, we live in an amazingly beautiful area, and we sometimes take it for granted, but I think we need to work to keep it this way. And because I think we assume it'll always look this way. But we should also be doing our part, however modest it might be in a community of 3,000 people, to reduce our impact on climate change. Whether you believe that climate change is caused by people or not, there's virtually no question that greenhouse gas emissions are contributing to global warming. And many communities and states around the country are taking initiatives on their own to do this. New York State's done it through what they've called the Climate Smart program. It was begun by the state in 2009 with the goal of engaging and educating local governments in New York State, providing a framework to guide their climate action efforts, and recognizing their achievements as they make progress. The first and easiest step for a local government to take is simply to take the pledge to become a climate smart community. And both the town of Northeast and the village of Millerton did that earlier this year. And they've done that along with 232 other communities around the state. So this is something that has been adopted quite widely. This first step allows us to apply for grants from the state and probably from the county as well. This community has very limited resources, and grants are a great way of enabling us to expand our activities without unduly burdening taxpayers. After registering as a climate smart community, and that's literally just sending in a resolution from the town board saying we are becoming a climate smart community, the next step is to work to become certified. And the state has set out a long list of activities which communities can undertake in order to become certified. Each of them is worth a certain number of points, and you have to do a certain number of these in order to achieve either a bronze or silver certification. And it's a long process. It's a years-long process, and only 20-some communities around the state have actually gotten there. So it's really just a way to guide a number of activities, and there are some which we've done independently of Climate Smart, which would qualify for points as well. So now we're ready to begin taking on some of these activities. The town board has designated the CAC, the Conservation Advisory Committee, to be the implementing task force, and for Diane Engelke, our CAC chair, to be the coordinator. The CAC has been working to help us get started, and they've recommended that we apply for a grant to accomplish 3 priority items at this time. This first one is a mouthful, but bear with me. It's a review of existing community plans, policies, and projects in the town of Northeast and the village of Millerton to identify climate adaptation strategies, policies, and projects to decrease vulnerability to climate change. Despite the bureaucratic language, this is an important project. The town and the village have many policies and plans, some dating back a long time, and many of which were not necessarily written with any sensitivity to climate. It's also to assess our general resilience and would include such things as a review of the town's disaster preparedness, something that could have benefits for the community way beyond climate aspects. The cost of this first project has been estimated at $9,057. A second project would be a study of road stream crossings in the town of Northeast and the village of Millerton. Bridges and culverts, as Bob knows well, are very susceptible to flooding, and the consequences can be serious, not just damages to the structure and the associated repair or replacement, but actually life and safety threats to motorists and residents as well. This project would include an inventory and an assessment of structures in the field, hydrologic and hydraulic modeling to characterize future floods, working with town and village staff to flag crossings that might impede emergency response, prioritization of potential replacement projects based on flood risk reduction. The town of Dover recently, town of Dover is a little bit ahead of us in terms of the Climate Smart program. They started this 2 years ago, and they are well on their way. And they have done this study of road stream crossings, and they've shared with us how helpful it was to them, because it's really a detailed analysis of every single culvert and bridge in the community. And it's also a useful document in seeking additional funding to mitigate flood risk at bridges and culverts. This study has been estimated at $13,150. The third initiative would be a government operations greenhouse gas emissions inventory. This would assess the greenhouse gas emissions from all town and village owned or leased buildings, structures, vehicles, and so on. This would form an important baseline from which we can assess future improvements as a result of higher performing buildings and vehicles. It's also a very high priority item for the state in this program, and the cost for us has been estimated at $12,500. In beginning our work in this Climate Smart community program, the CAC and the town board members have been meeting with the Housatonic Valley Association, otherwise known as HVA. HVA does a great deal of high-quality environmental studies and assessments, and they have done a lot of the work for the town of Dover. HVA is also currently working with the town of Amenia on very similar pieces, and if they were to perform some of the work I've described, there would be some economies of scales which would benefit us. HVA is prepared to help us get an application in before the deadline. The deadline for applying is July 27th, so it's an extremely tight timetable, 2 weeks. But they've done a lot of this work for other communities. They have a lot of the language and so on in their capabilities. And they've also been quite successful in getting these applications approved. So the CAC is recommending that with HVA's assistance, the town apply for a grant from the state's Climate Smart Grant Program to cover these three activities. While the grant program does require a 50% match, HVA's work on the first two items would actually satisfy the match requirement for them. On the third one, the greenhouse gas emission study, the match would be could be as much as $6,250. We would need to look for another consulting organization other than HVA to help us in this particular work, and there are other organizations that have done a lot of work in actually assessing greenhouse gas emissions. There would be a number of ways of coming up with this match, including counting volunteer hours, as well as the possibility of securing private donations to help with them. However, I would suggest that the town nonetheless appropriate $6,250 in next year's budget as a fallback in case other ways of meeting the match are insufficient. So I have prepared a draft resolution just basically authorizing the town to apply for this. But in the meantime, if you all have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And I promise not to talk so long next time.
I don't have any questions. You have a very thorough presentation.
The maximum that we can go in for for these grants is $40,000. And as Chris outlined here, we're going in for 36,000.
About 36,000 of that.
Yeah. With the aid of HBA, of course, that reduces our needs here to $6,125. So I think that's a pretty good deal. We're certainly not going to be able to get that. And we need to do this now because the funds for this type of thing are starting to dry up. And they may not be available in future years. So we need to get going on it and doing it now. With that, I'm going to have, Lisa, can you read the resolution for the...
This
Okay,
one?
yeah.
The same thing?
Yes.
Okay. It's a proposed climate smart grant resolution. The town board of the town of Northeast hereby authorizes the town supervisor and the town clerk to work with the Housatonic Valley Association to prepare and submit a grant application to the New York State DEC Climate Smart Communities Program for an amount not to exceed $40,000 to assist with a series of priority actions required to complete the certification.
Can I have a motion to accept the resolution made by Chris Kennan, seconded by John Merwin? I think you need a roll call vote on this.
George?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Ralph?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
John?
Very good.